This is weird.
Even if we're not,
I
even
don't
if,
like it at
even if
all.
it doesn't work,
We close the
we'll
screen.
film it. We did this the other day. You're fine.
I know, but I was on me and I didn't have to look at it.
You have to look at
You
yourself?
was in the middle.
You'd have to look at yourself. Yeah.
Look away. Look away.
Good. Oh yeah, you got to speak into the mic. All right, so we're doing this live to you guys and also live on the computer, which will be a double live, which is very weird. It's almost like
Very weird.
Inception, because usually we don't do these live either. So, yeah. So into the storm, 2 Samuel 20. It's been a couple weeks. We had semifinals. We've had some travel and all that stuff. So a little behind here. It's been a couple weeks. But, hey, applause for Ben for getting this all set up, though.
Good job, Ben.
Yeah. So I'll pray us in, and then we'll go at it. We got Jim, Jake, and Brian. Nope, those were this, and so
Ain't she on that hike? Did she hike that mountain or something?
What you doing in Memphis? Visiting friends. Hey, you has friends?
I didn't know. I thought we were her friends. I guess not, because she didn't tell any of us that she was leaving.
Pretty sure she only has 2 friends.
We're no longer friends. All right, Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for everyone up here, their heart for you, Lord. Everyone out there listening, everyone in this room as well. Just pray that your words be said and not ours, and I just pray that you'd speak through us, through your Spirit, and just give us the knowledge and, like I said, that it's not our words but yours. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, the revolt of Sheba. There happened to be a troublemaker there named Brian Nelson, son of Bichri, a man from the tribe of Benjamin. Actually, Sheba, sorry. Sheba blew his ram's horn and began to chant, "Down with the dynasty of David. We have no interest in the son of Jesse. Come on, you men of Israel, back to your homes." So all the men of Israel deserted David and followed Sheba, son of Bichri. But the men of Judah stayed with the king and escorted him from from the Jordan River to Jerusalem. When David came to his palace in Jerusalem, he took the 10 concubines he had left to look after the palace and placed them in seclusion. Their needs were provided for, but he no longer slept with them. So each of them lived like a widow until she died. Then the king told Amasa, "Mobilize the army of Judah within 3 days and report back at that time." So Amasa went out to notify Judah, but it took him longer than the time he had been given. Then David said to Abishai, "Sheba, son of Bichri, is going to hurt us more than Absalom did. Quick, take my troops and chase after him before he gets into the fortified town where we can't reach him." So Abishai and Joab, together with the king's bodyguard and all the mighty warriors, set out from Jerusalem to go after Sheba. As they arrived at the great stone of Gibeon, Amasa met them. Joab was wearing his military tunic with a dagger strapped to his belt. As he stepped forward to greet Amasa, he slipped the dagger from its sheath. "How are you, my cousin?" Joab said, and took him by the beard with his right hand as though to kiss him. Amasa didn't notice the dagger in his left hand, and Joab stabbed him in the stomach with it so that his insides gushed out onto the ground. Joab did not need strike again, and Amasa soon died. Joab and his brother Abishai left him lying there and continued after Sheba. One of Joab's young men shouted to Amasa's troops, "If you are for Joab and David, come and follow Joab." But Amasa lay in his own blood in the middle of the road, and Joab's men saw that everyone was stopping to stare at him. So he pulled him off the road into the field and threw a cloak over him. With Amasa's body out of the way, everyone went on with Joab to capture Sheba, son of Bichri. Meanwhile, Sheba traveled through all the tribes of Israel and eventually came to the town of Abel Beth Maacah. All the members of his own clan, the Bichrites, assembled for battle and followed him to the town. When Joab's forces arrived, they attacked Abel Beth Maacah. They built a siege ramp against the town's fortifications and began battering down the wall. But a wise woman in the town called out to Joab, "Listen to me, Joab. Come over here so I can talk to you." As he approached, the woman asked, "Are you Joab?" "I am," he replied. So she said, "Listen carefully to your servant." "I'm listening," he said. Then she continued, There used to be a saying, if you want to settle an argument, ask advice at the town of Abel. I am one who is peace-loving and faithful in Israel, but you are destroying an important town in Israel. Why do you want to devour that belongs to the Lord? Then Joab replied, believe me, I don't want I don't want to devour or destroy your town. That's not my purpose. All I want is a man named Sheba, son of Bichri, from the town or from the hill country of Ephraim, who has revolted against King David. If you hand over this one man to me, I will leave the town in peace. All right, the woman replied, we will throw his head over the wall to you. Then the woman went to all the people with her wise advice, and they cut off Sheba's head and threw it out to Joab. So he blew the ram's horn, called his troops back from the attack. They all returned to their homes, and Joab returned to the king at Jerusalem. Now Joab was the commander of the army of Israel. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, was captain of the king's bodyguard. Adoniram was in charge of the forced labor. Jehoshaphat, son of Ahilud, was the royal historian. Sheba was the court secretary. Zadok and Abiathar were the priests, and Ira, descendant of Jair, was David's personal priest.
Jeez.
There you go.
Wow. Grabbed him by the beard and kissed him and stabbed him.
And then they cut off his head and threw it over the wall.
That was a different one.
I know, but I'm just saying
Yeah.
that was the highlights of that
Yeah.
chapter. It's ruthless. It's a different world back then, you know.
It's almost so serious, man.
Relax, everybody. Relax.
Who's been following along, like on Into the Storms, kind of know what's going on? Okay. Yeah, the closer David gets to the end of his reign, the closer he gets to the end of his reign, all the prophetic truths is coming about, just the chaos and the war, and from the consequences of his sins, 15 years before that. It's sad because you hate to see all this happening, but it is what it is. And instead of his life ending in peace, it ended, with turmoil and war, and all the way up to his death, just because of some dumb decisions.
In my life, for me, this is just for Jim. Like, I'm always grateful and thankful that my salvation is something that was given to me and it was a free gift.
Mhm.
And that's there, and I feel secure about that in my life. And then after that, everything else after that on this planet, we have to fight for. And your faith to me is like fitness. Like, you don't do it, it's going away.
Yep.
Like, it won't take too long. And that's kind of, we look back at David's life and we see
He got lazy a little bit,
Yeah.
And I talked about this, I touched on this yesterday. For me, my faith, I have like 3 categories every day that I kind of, at the end of the day, kind of assess where I'm at: faith, family, and fitness. And I mean, for most people here, fitness is a pretty easy one to kind of use as an analogy. If you don't do some fitness every day, most days, not every single day, but most days, then you're going to start to lose it. But if you look at faith and family the same way, it's very similar. But you have to be not critical or hypercritical, but you need to be honest with yourself in those areas. And faith, and I feel like David could have used this in all of his stuff. There's multiple times where it talks, in his early life, David continually went to the Lord and continued to do that. And he was, pretty prosperous. And then family as well. He kind of like got lazy with his family. And then even it talks a little bit at different parts about his fitness, really, because when it's talking about there's a point where anybody who's followed along where he talks about where kings usually go to war, or his men talk to him about how lazy he's getting. And so you look in those 3 areas, and it's pretty crazy to think about. In those 3 areas, when he started to lack, all this stuff started to happen, where things, for lack of a better term, start to go to shit,
I've never even what you just said about the fitness part of David.
I didn't think about it until just now. So
because it's incredible, because you think he's a teenager and he goes and whips the strongest, most lethal weapon the Philistines has, and at the prime of his life, he's around 40 here. 40, 42. He's at war, and he almost gets whooped by Goliath's brother. And his mighty men say, "Hey, you need to go back to the house.
Yeah.
Like,
go on back.
You ain't ready." And these are the same guys that were with him through the whole thing. So they're probably around the same age. And it says that I think it was Benaiah that went out and killed the brother of Goliath, just like took him down, the one that almost killed David.
Yeah,
One of them,
one of the
mighty men.
mighty men.
Yeah, I never really thought of it that way.
Every day, as a human being, I think you have to have answers mentally, physically, and spiritually.
Mhm.
That's what we're saying.
Yeah.
You got to pay attention. If you don't have answers, you're not working at that, then power's going to leak out there somewhere in one of those spaces. And it doesn't necessarily mean for me in my life that I'm not going to heaven.
No,
That's not
this
taken
and
care of. It's-
yeah, none of this what's going on here has anything to do with David's salvation
or his calling,
or any of that.
king, or
Right.
any of those.
But all of these things keep happening. Like we said, it's consequences of what happened previous when he let things kind of go to their side. And I think a lot of people, who aren't Christian or don't understand or early in that, they think that, and I'll go back to myself. I thought God was just kind of up there judging me at all times. But really, it's kind of our fault that these things start to happen. It's not God just standing up there like, oh, you screwed up. Now this is going to happen. It's like, it's just what happens. When we do these things, there's got to be consequences. What we do affects what everybody else does.
In my life, I'm not saying that I'm spirit, I don't think because I think there are.
Mhm.
But if I go look at my life and I'm being honest, lots of the trouble that I have in my life is my own doing.
Yep.
It's
100%.
It's me and my emotions, not working to train my emotions, not being disciplined, not gratitude, not living in grace, a lot of those things. And I can look at it and go, man,
You can point it back to one.
if the devil was hunting me, he wouldn't even showed up.
Yeah.
Because you're doing
I've done it myself. Yeah. Yeah.
In a test and a consequence are two different things too. God, even, we can be walking hand in hand with God and be going through something really horrible, and that can be, he talks about it in Romans, God's going to put tests in our life to bring us closer. So I have to try to differentiate between test and consequence, because a lot of times something be happening, I go, God's punishing me again for what I did 15 years ago. And it's not. It's like these are things that come in my life that I struggle with, and I mean, Jim knows I talk. There's things that I deal with on a daily basis. I think God will keep testing me, and keep pushing me, and keep refining me to either get it right or I just quit, one of the two. But the consequences of what I did years ago is just, it is what it is. It's like David. They're going to be there. There's like a scar. I got scars all over my body, and I can look at them and tell you exactly what they came from 15 years ago. So they're not going away.
I really like that. I mean, it's the same thing like with fitness. Let's go to fitness. Like, put somebody in some adversity, and they don't have to be the fittest person. Put them in from 2 rounds past what they're capable of, and then we find out who they are.
Yeah.
That adversity reveals your character as a human being.
Reveals and refines.
Yeah.
It's
like I think the truth in that moment either sets you free and is refining
Mm-hmm.
and sharpening,
Mhm.
or it's going to crush you like gravity.
Yep.
One of those two things, depending on where your heart is in that space you're in. And I love what you just said, because I think just like we're going to go test ourselves out there today physically, and it's going to sharpen and refine us. I think God does the same thing. I love how you just said that.
Is it Peter or Paul who says rejoice in tribulation? Is it in First Peter or it's in First Peter or
one of them?
Romans? Is it Paul? Yeah.
Was it Mary?
Like, who rejoices? I mean, who rejoices in that, really? Like when these things come.
I mean,
No, not me.
me.
Like I struggle. I'm a complainer, honestly. Like
you are a complainer.
Yeah. Thanks.
That's what it says.
We all are, though.
Rejoice in suffering, be patient in tribulation.
Yeah.
And I like that. I'm gonna use that for sure, because then people ask like, why bad things happen? And God's still God, and like He set up the world and creation the way He has, but it doesn't mean He's directly like punishing people for and you reap what you sow.
Yeah.
Like David does here. Yeah, that's big time. And it's not that, like he said, He's striking down lightning on you, but because we sin, like there's going to be payment for that. Like you treat someone poorly, eventually you're probably going to get treated poorly, not because of like karma or God doing that to you, just because like you keep doing that, it's eventually going to come around back to you.
Well, I don't know if you're about to say what I was talking about, how we gave up the lease.
That's exactly.
So,
yeah.
And we've talked about this on the podcast before, but I think it's valuable at this point is, God created the world and it was perfect and all these things and gave it to us. And what did we do? We turned it over to Satan. And that's why I think that's why bad things happen, because we gave over the keys to the world to Satan. And God's not gonna, go back on that lease that he gave to us until Christ comes back. So it's just things happen because of the things and the decisions we've made. It you could really go all the way back to the apple and the snake in the garden, really.
I was sitting talking to a guy on Thursday, and he's somebody who used to be a big time faith guy, and I love what you're saying, and in kind of a practical way, I think God made this world.
Mm-hmm.
He created it,
Mhm.
and he made us.
Yep.
We're the design,
Yep.
right? So when I go looking for truth, I can start there.
Yep.
And so I'm in this conversation with this guy who's gone completely off the deep end. Completely. It's not even reasonable or rational anymore. And he's somebody who played a key role in my life, helping me get back on my feet. And I'm doing everything I can to talk about the truth. Not trying to be right.
Right.
I didn't want to try to be right in his life. I just kept going back to
This is
So
the
when-
facts. Yeah.
like this right here. That's gravity, bro. That's going to happen. And God made that.
Yep.
And it wasn't even reasonable. It wasn't even reasonable. I couldn't even get there. And I was doing everything I could to say, to provide him some perspective without being religious.
Yeah.
Rules without
Yep,
religion.
yep.
So I think when we start talking about that, if God made us and he made the world, and then there's this to miss the mark, to sin, to miss the mark, and in the middle of all that, it can be compounded. And if your grandfather was that way, and that's what got passed to your son, and then that's what got passed to you and your family, look at all the damage that gets handed down. And we have to fight through, try really hard not to make my problems be my daughter's problems, to fix that and correct that. So it's
And
not something that
They've got to live through it.
For me, what you're saying about what we're living through and the consequences of sin from the beginning of Adam, that's why we have to be very deliberate about where we set our hope in our eyes. Because Paul makes that real clear that he puts his hope not in the things of this world, because if everything we're going to base our life upon is what we're looking at directly in front of us, we are going to be miserable.
You're always going to look for something else.
It's just going to be something happening
Always.
as opposed to me going, man, in this world, I'm going to have trouble, but be of good cheer. I've overcome the world. I've just got to keep going forward. I just got to keep, all right, I messed up. Let's go again. But I know that at some point, and you need to know at some point that we have this eternity waiting on us. And eternity is a long time compared to 70, 80 years where we're going to spend the rest of our life in a perfect environment where there is no sin or sickness or problems, or we're going to spend our rest of our life separated from God, where we're completely exposed to the consequences of sin in an eternal situation. So keeping my focus on, it's not going to be like this forever. Just keep going forward. You talked to me about this weekend at the race. That race is a good analogy for me, because that was miserable. Miserable, fun, miserable, but I'm not built to go at the pace these guys go, and I never will be. But you're out there and you're grinding and stuff's happening. I honestly, I
breaking pedals.
I didn't put the pedal on. I didn't put the pedal on. Okay, so your pedal falls off. Why is this happening to me? And I'm having to carry the bike 3 miles out of that canyon, and it's 100 degrees. But you have.
Walking up, carrying the bike, and you're just looking like, what are you doing? Ride with it.
Or roll it.
Yeah, something. 2 miles, man. It was awesome. You did good.
But I mean, it's like you have a choice right there, right?
Yeah.
You can go fix the bike and go again, or you can quit.
Yeah.
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 And I wanted to quit. Trust me, I was like, I'm done.
I'm not going back.
I'm not going back in that
I'm not
canyon.
going back in that canyon. To get to the to what we were talking about too, though. Joab. Joab's he's ruthless, man.
Yeah.
Amasa is supposed to go, get the army ready David's army ready, and taking too long. So Joab's like, I'm just gonna kill him.
He's ruthless.
Joab's ruthless.
And multiple times now we've read this.
Yeah.
It's like,
You know what?
part of me likes, there's this, I like dangerous.
Yeah.
I like dangerous. I don't like dark. Don't go dark. But I like to be able to play offense.
Yeah.
I like men and women
Yeah.
who make things happen.
Yeah.
And he's that dude. And you kind of want those guys around you, but
You don't want to hear about it. Yeah, he's just like, yeah, come here, Mason, and then just stabs him. Amazing. How many? Do we have a death count on how many people Joab has killed to this point?
Did the same thing to Abner. right?
Legally?
Yeah.
It must have been people around that had to been like, we shouldn't do this. He's like, nah. David's
No,
not doing
no,
anything about
David's
it.
not.
Like,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but that's
Why do you
what we-
think David didn't hit? Because David, like the last thing he
David
told
got
Saul.
soft, man.
But I mean,
know.
David
from,
got soft.
do you think he was scared of Joab from the get go?
No, I think it was almost like turn my head. You know,
'Cause
like it's he's gonna make stuff happen. You know, Joab has made stuff happen, even if it's not the right way. And so David just kind of turns his head to it and is like, "Well, it got done." You know.
Yeah, I don't know if, he's
And
scared
I don't know if
of it
anybody
or
even
what.
I
told
think
him.
he's.
He has so
I
much
think he's
power.
scared.
Job does. I think he might be either a little scared or worried. Just like, if I go against Joab, could Joab do what like
All these other guys.
Absalom did?
Yeah.
And really pull away. And even because Joab had Judah on his side more than anyone, like David's always go to.
Yeah, so I kind of got lost and not lost, but as I'm reading this, I'm like, oh yeah, Mesa was with Bichri, and then I'm like, no, David's the one that told Amasa because I read it this morning. I was like, oh yeah, and then as I'm reading it again, I'm like, no, Amasa was who David sent first, and then it says here he just took too long, so he sent Joab and Abishai, and those two guys because they're brothers, and he's just like, all right, this is taking too long, and so he
Like-
greets him with a kiss and then just stabs him side his intestines pour out.
Yeah. He did
Signature
see the knife,
move.
too. That was weird.
Yeah. Do I?
It's a signature move.
Yeah.
I think he dropped one sword and then he pulled out like a secret one and stabbed him. I couldn't figure it out. Like, I didn't see it.
Yeah, and it's just kind of like, all right, here's this. All right, we're gonna kill him. Didn't notice the dagger in his left hand.
Well, if you read a couple chapters ahead, when Solomon does take the throne, David
Kills
gives him his speech. He's like, "I want you to be a man, and by the way, you
Get
need to
rid of
get rid of
Joab."
Joab. Like he's dangerous."
Yeah.
And
And doesn't
mad
Benaiah,
too. Why put it on your kid?
I know, right? Yeah, he's
That's what I'm
like,
saying.
no, Dad, you do it.
Benaiah took care of it.
But I took care of it, yeah. Which you see, and we always go back to End of the Storm, Day of War, and you can just see there's a thing between Benaiah and Joab from the beginning in those books. So, but he has the foresight of foreshadowing, I guess. So,
As we started through Samuel, I started thinking about this idea of, and I started calling it, for lack of a better term, a king syndrome.
Yeah.
And I've talked to you about it a couple of
Mhm.
times as it relates to some people in my life. But David's a really good example of it, where things got soft and got easy for him,
mhm.
and he quit paying attention to all the details. And he ends up in the wrong places. He ends up on the roof when he shouldn't be on the roof. And as he began to have more power and things got easier and softer for him.
He's above.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just, the details quit mattering to him.
Mhm.
His fitness, his faith, all those things. And I know I have to be careful in my own life. I know of men in my life, if they get into that place where, if you don't, I got to figure out how to say this because I like the word. There has to be room in your life where there's only adversity and you will not allow yourself out.
Mm-hmm.
No room for effery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Following me?
Yeah, I get it.
No room for that in your life. And we got to have places in our life where we hold ourselves accountable that way and we don't let ourselves off the
Or have other people hold you
Yeah.
accountable, or trust people enough that,
Yeah.
hey, any of these guys up here at this table, I would, if you told me something
Right.
that I needed to actually, if you were critical of something, I would listen
Yeah.
because we have miles together, and I
Mhm.
trust that you guys are in the right place. But you got to be able and willing to take that. I don't feel like David at this point in his life is willing to take that. What a couple
you're
chapters
listening.
previous, he would, like, there was Joab or somebody was like, hey, get up,
Joab
get
called
up,
out
yeah,
the-
get up
the
and let's go.
absences.
David's, it was when his son died.
Yeah.
He's like, the men aren't gonna honor this. So get up.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
We can get so comfortable and all of our needs are met.
mhm,
And some of these people that I'm working with, this one gentleman in particular, when he arrives, everywhere he goes, everybody tells him yes. He has so much money, it doesn't matter. Everybody just tells him yes. The people in his office tell him yes. Everybody tells him yes. Nobody says no. And
Right.
he doesn't ever put him in a place where even fitness or anything challenges him. And
Right.
then he arrives in this space where he literally thinks what he's saying is true.
is everything because he's been told yes all the
And
time.
you're like, bro, that's not even close to being the truth.
Right.
And then nobody around him to be able to say, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like,
What are you doing?
And in the culture, Western culture we live in, I think there are a lot of people that find themselves in that space, whether you've got a ton of money or not. You got your phone, whatever you're looking at, you got to process, what's got your time, your attention.
Yeah, because it
When you
just
spend your
snowballs
money.
from there. If
Mhm.
you go one way, you can pretty much talk yourself or read yourself into anything because there's so many differing point of views on everything in life.
Yeah.
And
especially today.
Yeah, and the more and more of that stuff you put in, you can walk yourself completely
Yeah.
off of a ledge.
I was around a guy the other night that got arrested, and he started just jabbering stuff that he thought was true, you know. And I know this person doesn't have a ton of medication.
Mhm.
I kind of know the history about who he was, and you're just listening to him, and you're like, oh, you're crazy.
Mhm.
And he was,
Yeah.
and he needed help.
Yeah.
But then you start taking like that kind of a person, and then I'm with this friend of mine in Texas who I know is one of the smartest people I know, and he sounds like that dude that just got arrested in many ways.
Yeah.
Just unhinged and not connected to the truth. So the point I'm trying to make is if we're not working at that all the time, my dad used to call it stinking thinking.
Mhm.
That's stinking thinking, boy.
Mhm.
You gotta have somebody in your life like
Mhm.
to combat stinking. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't
heck
care
yeah.
because the guy that you're talking about who's super successful, nobody tells him no. Like if you gotta, everybody needs to know if you were in that position and you're super successful and you got all these people under you, you're gonna face the same challenge. It's not he didn't ask for that, you know. It's just that's what comes in your life. And if you're not deliberate about going, hey, you know, I got a couple people, you know, then that
Here's
doesn't.
what's nuts. His response, and this is a person that I have miles with, hardcore miles time. His response is like he wants to fight. That's where his ego is. What?
It's the only way to settle things. I mean,
Like, what are you doing?
just kidding.
You know what I mean? Like,
Joke. It was a joke.
But think about it. If your ego arrives in that space and you think you're right, that's what happens
Yeah,
to us. We
yeah.
think, I don't know.
All right, I'm gonna defend this. Yeah, I'm gonna stab you with a dagger.
Yeah.
I mean, really, and I'm
It's
going to
easy.
use this as this is my Bible because this is where I have my Bible, right? Because none of us carry a Bible anymore. But this is also a bad thing too because it's the world. And this is something that I think each and every one of us, if you're not in the Bible over here every day where the truth is, and I believe truth is, then you're over here on Brian's phone, which is not the truth. It's the world, you know. Kidding.
No, I
It's a
get it.
joke. And so that's what we're talking about. And what I think is you got to recenter. And what you talk about with mindset stuff is you got to know where your center is or what your aim is and hit that daily. And for us up here, that's the Bible. That's God's word. That's, I think, what Jesus said, all the red words in here. If not, you can talk yourself into or go on TikTok or whatever your or Instagram, whatever social media, and you can justify just about any thinking of the world
Mm-hmm.
through that type of stuff. And so I think coming back to this, and you know, all of us have that with each other. We talk regularly or re-aim at this and get in this daily. This is the Bible. Brian's phone is bad. My phone is good. Then we have a kind of a center or something to measure against, I guess.
If we went back to the day that you started Into the Storm with David,
Mhm.
what's happened in David's life didn't happen like overnight. So like you're talking about this, once we start pulling away a little here and looking here, and we start mixing and matching, like David went from a man after God's own heart, like this young, fearless, totally sold out man to where he is today. And which is not horrible, but I'm just saying things in our life are the same way. We don't go from here to here overnight. You know, the enemy's very crafty. And what's going on in our world today, what you're talking about with this phone, if we're not actively seeking God's truth in the word and you're looking over here, you're going to see the enemy. The enemy's very smart. Like he's very smart with me, how he deals with me. He don't just throw me in the fire. He just a little bit at a time. And you start going, well, I guess that's not wrong. I guess that's not wrong. Well, today's different. You know, people are different. Church is different. And then you wake up one day and you're completely thinking opposite of what the word of God actually says when God says, do not do this. But somehow the world today has convinced us it's okay if we smear the lines a little bit because
just be you.
It gets different time,
Right.
and it's very, we have to stay grounded. I'm thankful for that, the reading we have every morning.
Yep.
The group of guys, because it holds me accountable. Like the first thing I do when I get up, I mean, me and Luke live together. I mean, he does the same thing before we get to chatting. Like we both get in there and do our daily reading. And I know if I don't do it, y'all are going to know I didn't do it. So that's the accountability I need.
Yep.
Just momentum and emotion will put you in a space you don't want to be. I mean, even if you aren't thinking about it, if you're not intentional about it,
Mm-hmm.
just what's going on out there, the current of what's going on
Yep.
around us in the culture we live in. And we've all done it 100%. Even if
Yeah.
they haven't.
Not to say we're immune to it at all. All of us have done it. You let emotion get the best of you sometimes.
A
But
lot.
How do you handle it
I'm
after?
talking about if you're not it's not relationship based, and you're not aiming at it every day. Just like your fitness.
Yep.
If you're not doing it every day,
It'll catch up with you.
you'll be unfit. It's like me at some point,
You're getting back.
out of breath.
You're getting back, but that's not your fault.
You got to be intentional. Because like 5 years or 10, and it seems like it happened really quick to David. It's like 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And we've gone through like a study. And then that's what Paul's like, if you read the New Testament, and like there's standards we have to hold ourselves to. If you're a Christian, you have to hold yourself to standards. If you're not, then you can hold to whatever standard you want. For Christians, like the truth is not relative. It's like set in stone. It's what Jesus said, what the Lord's given us, what Paul wrote. Galatians 5, I was looking there because verse 1 says, for freedom, Christ has set us free. So like we have freedom. Like this patriotism, American freedom is awesome too. We have even something more than that. But then he says, stand firm, therefore. It's like, if you don't stand firm, what's going to happen? Don't submit again to the yoke of slavery. So he's saying like, there's this burden you're going to have to bear if you don't stand firm in like what you know, like intentionally doing that. Then later on in chapter 5, it talks about like keeping in step with the Spirit. Like, what's the fruit you have if you have the Spirit of God inside of you? Like, what's the things that's going to come out of you? Like love, joy, peace, patience. Then it says like, what is the flesh lives inside of you? Like, that's the main thing. That's like you're letting the world get into you. Like for me, that'd be like social media, my worries, what I aim at. If I get messed up on that, then things that are come out of me is the works of the flesh, which it calls like sexual immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissensions, divisions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, like all these bad things that sin pours out of us. You can see that in David. Like there's so much of that in Israel, like specifically dissensions and divisions, because he was like letting the flesh rule him. That's what they were letting rule him. You can see in Israel in those like golden years when they were together and like they were being ruled, just because they followed God as the one God. And then just even though they're following God, but if they weren't standing firm and like being sure of that, then all these little things would creep into them. And like Paul was saying the same thing to the church. Like if you, as we as people of God, don't stand firm here in what we know to be true each day, and like work together to do that, then eventually these other things are going to creep in and like tear you apart.
It's good. It's true. I mean, those, you name anything in that second thing, those are the things you want to go to, you know, as a person. You're just naturally, that's where your flesh goes, or the worldly things go.
I think like I remember when I think about dealing with adversity, I've decided for my life that adversity equals opportunity. I don't mean looking for trouble. I'm not looking for trouble, but adversity is important. And the reason why I think it's important, because if there wasn't adversity, then why would you need God?
True.
Why would you need him? And that's this thing we're talking about. You get into a space where there's no adversity in your life. And if I was
Comfortable. You get comfortable.
if I was the devil, and some people say I am,
Could it be Satan?
I don't know.
what would I do?
Possibly.
Yeah. I'd want to steal your relationship. That's what I want to steal.
Mm-hmm.
Can't steal your salvation. I would want to steal your relationship. So whatever, all the things that you just named, I'd want to do all of that. I want to be distracted. So that whatever, I think like, I've said this before, I don't know if I've said it, but like to me, this is according to Jim now. This is not in the Bible. If I'm standing before God, and what if he had the power to run my life like it was designed, 100% of what I was capable of, and he just runs that. And then underneath that, he actually plays in real time what happened to me, and then you compare.
That would suck.
Yeah. So for about the first 26 years, I'm going to hope we just go black.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like that, you know.
Stock market here.
Yeah. It's just like fail.
Getting close.
Fail.
Yeah.
And then, just once again, right? My salvation is not at hand. But
Mhm.
he put me here on this planet with reason and with purpose. And he designed me to want to be able to live inside of adversity and do well in that space, and to stay connected in relationship with him, and then to walk out
What he had.
said.
Yep.
And if we're not running at that every day, we're not paying attention. David's a great metaphor. Kind of maybe not getting it all.
You can maybe do the opposite of David's. You know, the first 26 years, he's close, and then all of a sudden,
Whatever.
drop
Just
off.
Finish strong.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's the same. I mean, First Samuel, we talked a ton about Saul
Yeah.
and how he started out relatively well, but then just kind of fell off. But he let a lot of those things, dissension, those things that Jake was saying, jealousy was the biggest thing. You could have replaced Saul's name with jealousy. We talked a lot about that, and you just let that stuff eat at you, and it takes hold, you know.
Sometimes, like I know in the dark times for me, I was asking God and everybody, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? And pretty soon, you know what? There are answers for all that stuff, but sometimes we can get lost in that.
Yeah.
Get buried with that. Sometimes it's about just getting up, doing what's right, fixing your problems, holding yourself accountable, taking care of the people you're supposed to take care of, saying I'm sorry when you screw it up. You know, that's what the whole keep coming forward thing in my life was. Like, I got to go that way.
That's how, like, they would say, like Paul would say, rejoice in suffering. And Jesus say, bless you, like when you're persecuted and all these bad things happen. Blessed just means you can be happy because of it, because like you can be a better man after that. Like you're a better man now. Then you were 26. I want to be a better man at 50. And then David was the same way. Like when it started, like he literally faced a giant. Like that's what it was. And that's what set him off, like rocket fuel into who he became, because he faced the giant in the right way.
Yeah.
Like you're metaphorical, like that can be a great thing. Adversity is opportunity. Adversity for David every time was opportunity to get ahead in the first 26 years or whatever. Like he got so far ahead because he kept coming at the adversity with the Lord behind him and like attacked it in the best way possible. And like he kept his eyes focused. That's what Paul this morning, like the little devotional thing, it was 1 Corinthians 9. Don't you know all the race and the runners run, but only one gets a prize. Run in such a way to get the prize. And that's what we do all the time here at Mayhem. Like there's one goal, win the CrossFit Games, freedom. Other people in here, we want to get as close as we can to that with the athletes. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training like we do here. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Like you don't care anything about your gold medals because they don't last forever.
Right.
And like one day, that's what it's so hard to keep. Even in my mind, I fully believe I'm going to stand before God one day. I'm going to see him face to face, and we're going to go back and see what we did, and it's going to be really good after that. And like it's hard to get my mind, like I'm literally going to die, and I'm going to open my eyes, and I'm going to see Jesus. That is what this is about. Like, and you can argue whether or not that's what happens when we die, but we're all going to die, and something's going to be there at the end. You better have your mind focused on something, because everything else here will fade. In 20, 30 years, people are going to care very little about how many championships Rich Froning won. And I talked about this the other day. Like, who won the Super Bowl in 2003? Do you know?
Patriots. I don't know. It's a good guess.
Actually, it was. Wow.
I mean, you
should have said 06 because you wouldn't know. I only know that one
Saints? No.
because it was the Colts.
Oh,
I was a super fan.
All right.
But other than that, people don't even care who won the Super Bowl. It's going to fade.
Tom
It's gonna
Brady?
go
You
away.
could have just said that.
Yeah, I know. No one was wrong that one. But all these crowns are going to fade. Like, only one's going to matter. And if you're a Christian, you believe this, you have to keep your eyes focused on that. Otherwise, the suffering, the suck fest we go through, and the hard things that come, and it's only going to get harder, won't be worth it. You have to keep your eyes there. And each day that you're intentional about that, it'll make that day a little better. And that's how we get better through that.
Can I combine those medals?
Yeah, there's
Throw those on eBay.
they're in the closet somewhere. They're in the closet somewhere.
That gift card.
Yeah, with that gift card, Under Armour gift card. Back to the thing. I think the hero in this story is the lady in the town, where she's just like, "Oh, you want him? Don't destroy our town. We'll cut his head off and throw it over the wall."
What a champ.
Why is it? And sometimes it just takes a really smart female
Yeah.
to come along and be like, "Hey, this is a
You
dumbass."
could probably, yeah. hey,
Chop his
hey,
head
you
off, throw it
idiots.
over the wall.
We'll take care of this.
All
Yeah,
the men are probably getting together like the pitchforks, like, we got to fight.
we're gonna fight, and she's like, "No, we'll take care of this." Yeah. So they didn't destroy the town, like we said, just because of a little wisdom there. You know.
When I was reading that, I thought, even for ourselves, like this is a couple weeks ago, when I was reading this passage, like with Joab, I think everybody here at this table could be a Joab in this situation where somebody says, "We got to get this done," or you're in, like you're worked up emotionally and you're angry, and you just run into it and start whooping. You know what I mean? Just tearing stuff apart. When a lot of times, if we'll just stop, pick up the phone,
Yeah.
Jim or Rich,
Communicate.
what do you think?
Communication
I
is
got.
huge.
I have to do this. This is what I'm told to do, or I'm upset right here. What do you think is the best route? Instead of just going. I mean, there's obviously, it doesn't say, but I'm sure there was many innocent people who died before she comes out and says, "Hey, we can settle this a different way."
Mm-hmm.
But the consequences of like his actions being just like full on emotion, anger, it cost some people their lives that would have never had. And so for us, I think when we get cranked up, and we're gonna fix this,
Batter
or we're
down
gonna
the
show
wall,
this person, or this person's gonna pay if we'll just stop and say, "Yo, Jake, this is what," and it's happened. It happens to everybody here. You get worked up. I think and it goes back to what you're saying earlier. We're all talking about action. So like, we're gonna think a certain way. I don't care who you are or how righteous you think you are. You are created. You're a sinner. We have a fleshly nature. Like our flesh is our flesh. And until we become like Christ, we're going to struggle with the flesh. There's a battle going on in Galatians between the spirit and the flesh. You know, and one's winning at all times. And so we're going to think stupid things. I don't think it's as much as, I don't think God's frowning on our stinking thinking as much as he is on our crap in action. You know, so like where we go from thinking, when it goes from thinking to action.
Some good stuff today, guys.
No, but seriously, when it goes from thinking to action is where the problem is, you know?
Jesus talks about thinking though. I mean, basically as soon as you start thinking it, it's an action. So, you know,
I think
if we're,
I mean, you can't
I
help.
get what you're saying, but I'm just,
It's important to know scientifically that we feel first. How we're wired.
Yeah.
The lymph of your brain fires first, and you feel
Immediately.
In this room does it. The next part of your brain that fires is the neocortex, and it puts language to what you feel. So if we're not training, disciplining ourselves, working on mentality and mindset, we don't have truth in our life that anchors us, then you're going to just feel. And that's not going to work out.
I completely get what you're saying. But
when somebody comes up to anybody in this room today and just says something horrible to you, I mean, you at that minute, you're going to think what you really want to say back. I don't care. Like, you're not going to be, oh, God, I'm glad he said that. Like, your intentions are going to probably want to be.
It's fight or flight, you know, whatever.
It's just how we react, you know? It's how you react. And
that's a verse you love, take every thought captive. Like, you can't help it. You're right. Things are going to come up, and like, but it's like what you do when it's there with it.
Yeah.
Like, everyone's going to have terrible thoughts.
Sure.
Once again, what's the point? The point is relationship with God. It is to discipline ourselves in that space, work hard at emotion gives life meaning, but it also betrays us. And so we got to continue battling for that. I don't want to call it a game, but that's the game, right? That's life, period. Get that stuff, be intentional, get it balanced. And then God gave us, when he made us, that option to choose. We get to choose. He said, choose life. Choose it today. Like, actively do it.
I told my friend last night, he continues to struggle with some things. And I was like, you're always going to think these thoughts. Like, what's going through your head as a man, you're going to think these thoughts, but you don't have to act on them. You know, I mean, it's just, we understanding that, like, that doesn't make you a bad person because you struggle internally.
We all struggle.
It's when we respond externally with the wrong decision. That's when the consequences come. When you do what David did, I mean, when he looked at Bathsheba, that was one thing. When he brought her to the house, that's another. You know, and so
3, 2, 1, go. I love this analogy. 3, 2, 1, go in CrossFit. What's there? 3, 2, 1, go. Buzzer goes off. What's there? What's in your mind? Whatever those dragons are, you're going to have to deal with them. You can't stay present. You can't stay task oriented. You can't get done inside of the workout what you want to get done. And life is the exact same way. 3, 2, 1, go.
Don't die.
What are the dragons? And some dragons we don't kill. Some dragons we just get good at turning and looking at it and then
handling it.
And you handle it, you deal with it, and you run that dragon over in the corner of your mind. You know, because some of that stuff is what you're talking about as far as being a man. We have to discipline ourselves and all of that.
Right.
You know? Sometimes I've been around faith guys who try to pray that stuff away.
We're not immune to it. It's not going away.
No.
It's always going to creep back.
Discipline yourself. Learn how to respond.
Yeah.
You know, decide what's true in your life and respond that way.
One of the most misquoted things I can't stand more here is it says, people say God won't allow you to be tempted beyond what you can bear. That actually doesn't say that. He'll let you be able to escape, but he will allow you to be tempted beyond what you can bear. And David was tempted beyond what he could bear, but it's like, what do you do in that moment? Are you going to succumb to it and like go into that temptation, or are you going to turn and run, or your father, or who those are people around you? Like, remember, you're not alone, because temptation is going to come and it's going to be more than you can handle. But what are you going to do when you can't handle it?
If you're not working intentionally at what you say you believe, and faith is one of those things. If you're not working at it, it won't be there for you in that moment.
Right.
It'll be momentum and emotion, and you'll find yourself in a spot. I'm guilty, 100% guilty of being in a spot where it's too much. I knew it was right. I didn't care.
Yeah.
And it cost me.
Yeah.
You know, I paid for it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't anybody's fault but mine.
Oh, no.
I like Into the Storm. I love that. Kind of as a metaphor, because we really do believe it that way. We got to go intentionally into the adversity and then understand and have the tools to survive in the storm. And then what we're looking for is actually over there
On the other
of
side.
that. And if
Yep.
you're running that direction,
It's going to catch you.
it's going to catch you, and it's going to catch you with your back to it.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a problem.
Read this, and then I'll begin. 2 Peter chapter 3, kind of going back to what you said at the beginning, Rich, about truth versus lies, and you spoke about it, Jake. But Peter says, speaking of these things in all of his letters, now he's talking about Jesus. Speaking of these things in all of Jesus' letters, some of his comments are hard to understand. And those who are ignorant and unstable have twisted his letters to mean something quite different, just as they do with other parts in Scripture. And this will result in their destruction. But you, believers, you already know these things, dear friends. So be on your guard. Then you will not be carried away by the errors of the wicked people and lose your own secure footing. Rather, you must grow in the grace and knowledge of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So, the Scriptures, everything that Jesus has told us, everything that we fight to believe, is somebody in my world today is going to try to twist that
Mhm.
and tell me I don't have to think like that, or that's too much, or not in today's world. But Peter, he continues to remind, or Jesus reminds us that it's when we start listening to these things is when we start to lose our secure footing. So be on guard. Find somebody, Jim, to hold you accountable to these things.
The pastor at the church we go to in Life Church, his big thing is reading in context. You can cherry pick all you want to fit whatever situation you're in. And I'm guilty of it when I was early on in my faith. I would just look through the Bible and find something that, worked towards my favor in whatever situation I was in and made it easier. Where if you don't look at the context of a lot of these verses, I mean, like Jake was saying, people misquote stuff. You need to know it. And that's why we all talk about having, we've gone through and read it in context. And why does it mean that? And have these discussions. And it's iron sharpens iron,
Live it.
Live it.
Prove it out.
Yep.
Make sure it works. If it's not working, it ain't true.
Yep.
Fix it. Figure out what the truth is. The barbell is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
When you go out there on that floor, it's the truth. It doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care how old you are. It doesn't care what your race is. It doesn't care. You better have your feet right. That's the first thing. And then the barbell will tell you whether or not you know what you're doing. And all of us are going to know when we watch you.
Yeah.
And if you've done it right, you've worked at it, and you practiced, then it'll be in the right spot. And then you can start adding weight. And then every now and then you look over at somebody who's new at it, and we go get them a PVC pipe, and we say, "Don't do that anymore."
It's refining you, like you
Do
said,
this.
refining you,
And the
making you
truth is
stronger.
the same thing. It's easy to see. It's easy to see what people believe because we see the fruit.
Mm-hmm. Anything else, everybody?
Is anybody else sweating up here?
I always sweat. It doesn't matter. I'm sweaty.
Bad sweaty.
That's what it is.
It's okay.
All right, I'll pray us out, and we'll move on. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for this incredible group once again that we have gathered here, but also this incredible group we have hanging out with us this weekend, or people tuning in out there. Just thank you for everyone and their hearts for you, Lord. And I just pray that you'd make those decisions and guide us along, and send your Spirit to anybody who is asking for that. And I just pray, Lord, that you continue to be with us. And once again, thank you so much.